Salve DISCIPULI, and welcome to this video on the subjunctive, specifically the imperfect and the pluperfect tenses. You can follow along in your book on pages 151 to 154, as well as using the worksheet that I handed out in class to take those notes. So let's go ahead and get started. Continuing on, there's a few more we want to look at. That one right there. Three there. And let's leave it at that. Basically, these are a new form. These are called subjunctives. And we're going to talk about what these are in the next. Subjunctive. Subjunctive comes from two Latin words. Sub, meaning under, and junct, which means joined. So subjunct means it's joined under the main clause, meaning that it is a subordinate clause. It is reliant on the rest of the sentence to make sense. You'll see this kind of, it's called a mood. You'll see this used a lot in subordinate clauses. Mood is a new element of verbs. It just means that the manner of expressing a verbal action or state of being. There's two moods. The one that we've met so far, every verb that we've ever talked about before this chapter, is called the indicative. Indicative is fact. There's no debating, there's no wishy-washiness about it. Indicative verbs indicate something that is factual. The subjunctive, the new one we're talking about now, can express things that sort of are. Something that's potential, something that is tentative, hypothetical, ideal, or unreal. These are kind of, they're not really, they're ethereal. They're not really facts yet. And we'll see some examples in how this operates. So let's go ahead and dive into some examples. In this sentence, we have a subordinate clause that's listed right here, cum valde timeret. And in this sentence, we have an example of a subjunctive, the bold right here. So the translation here is that the captain of our ship, since or because he was very afraid, forbade his own men to help us. Now, since or because are both good translations for cum here. Cum can be a very flexible word. It takes on a number of meanings, depending on what the context is. Now our verb here is timeret, and it's translated, he was afraid. Timeret is using a word in English that we've already been using, that's was, and that's indicating it's imperfect subjunctive. We're going to get into how and why you use the imperfect subjunctive here, but all you need to know right now is that this is the imperfect subjunctive. And here you can see in red now, red is our main clause, right? Our main clause is the stuff that you definitely need to make this sentence make sense. This sentence makes sense with the captain of our ship forbade his own men to help us. But on its own, this subordinate clause doesn't quite make as much sense. Since or because he was very afraid is not a full idea. So that subordinate clause relies on the rest of the sentence to make sense. Now let's look at a second example. This one is another example of a subordinate clause with a subjunctive verb. Here we have navigavisemos, meaning we had sailed. The translation of this sentence is when we had sailed for 4 days, suddenly a very great storm arose. And navigavisemos here is translated we had sailed. Now using the supporting, the connecting verb had, we know that that's going to be pluperfect, okay? This indicates action taking place before the main verb. So navigavisemos, pluperfect subjunctive, we had sailed. Alright, so now that we've looked at a few examples, how are we going to form the imperfect subjunctive and the pluperfect subjunctive? I'm going to put up an example here and see what we can think about it. So ambulare. Ambularem. I was walking. Now that's an example of an imperfect subjunctive. Now over here I'm going to add an example of a pluperfect subjunctive. For example, let's do ambulawism. I had walked. Okay? Think of the theory of to how these are made, and then we'll continue on the video once you can unpause this when you're ready. So the imperfect subjunctive is really very simple. You take the second principal part, that is the infinitive of a verb, and you add any personal endings. So let's take habeo, habere. That's a long E. You take that, you just take the second infinitive, that is the habere, and you add the personal endings. most, must, isnt. That's all you need. So for the pluperfect subjunctive, we're going to take the third principal part and add isse and then personal endings. So this is going to look very similar to the perfect active infinitive that we learned in 41, but this time it's just going to add those personal endings onto it. Alright, so let's try giving all the personal forms of these subjunctives. Let's start with ewado, ewadere, ewasi, ewasos. This means to escape. Now, all we have to do, remember from the previous slide, is take the imperfect subjunctive. To make the imperfect subjunctive, we're going to take the infinitive right here, and we're just going to add personal endings to it. So for ewadere, we're going to take it. We start with ewadere, and then we just add our personal endings. Those personal endings are mst, mus, tisnt. So for first person singular, I was escaping. Ewaderem, ewaderes, ewaderet, ewaderemus, ewaderetis, ewaderent. That's all you got to do. For the pluperfect subjunctive, we are going to take the third principal part and make the perfect active infinitive from that. That's adding isse, and then our personal endings. So we're going to take ewasi, add isse, and then our personal ending, ewasisem, ewasises, ewasiset, ewasisemos, ewasisetis, ewasisent. And that's all there is to it. You take the infinitive forms and you add personal endings to it. Now, on your worksheet, at this point you should have the answers to all the questions that we asked you there. And now just try your hand at those few examples and come in on Monday with any questions you might have. And I'll see you then. Enjoy your weekend.